Hey kids, Missenden Flyer here, hope you're well. Who can believe January 2020 is almost gone? That means it's time for another bike news. So if you're interested in what's been going on in the world of UK motorcycling for the month of January 2020, stick around and stay tuned. Alright then, you might want to grab yourself a brew because this could well be a fairly long video. I've got 4 papers to go through here, something like 20 stories. Some of them are only very quick, but anyway, we'll crack on without further ado. So the first paper then, the first story in here, just a little quick one. And the headline here, Honda makes 400 million. It's basically that Honda, the largest motorcycle manufacturer in the world, has made their 400 millionth motorcycle. Absolutely incredible. First one that ever rolled off the factory was a Dream D type, apparently, and that was 70 years ago. But the reason why I pointed out this little article is because this amazing statistic in here, as I say, they're the largest motorcycle manufacturer in the world since 1959. Annual production exceeds 20 million. That's a lot of motorcycles, and that's basically nearly 1 bike a second that they're making. That is absolutely enormous and puts pretty much all other bike manufacturers in the shade. Absolutely incredible, 1 bike a second. And while we're talking about motorcycle volumes, I wanted to mention Royal Enfield, because there's a big article in this edition of the paper, MCN, I'm getting these stories from, of course, Motorcycle News, about Enfield wanting to up their production. According to Ravi Kumar, the head of their production, they're rolling a bike off the production line every 45 seconds. Now that sounds nothing compared to Honda, but that still makes them a massive bike manufacturer. I know that most of the bikes are sold in India, but of course they've got plans to expand. They're certainly doing well with the new twins, the 650 twins here in Europe, and it consistently now the 650 Interceptor is at the top of the charts for over 600cc bikes, with the exception of the GS, of course. But anyway, they want to up their production as well. They're making 850,000 a year, and they're saying that it wouldn't be difficult for them to make 1.2 million. That's what they're looking to build from now on, 1.2 million bikes a year. So not quite the 20 million of Honda, but nonetheless still an awful lot of bikes, and way more than the likes of Triumph and other European manufacturers make. So Royal Enfield, definitely a force to be reckoned with. Already, of course, in India, a force to be reckoned with. I think are going to become more so here in Europe. Great news. I love Royal Enfield. I love the British heritage. I know it's an Indian-owned company, but the design and research now being done here in the UK, I just love all that. I buy entirely into all that stuff, so that's great. Whilst reading this article, they're talking about the guy that does the pinstriping as well. I think this must be on the classic 500s. They've got a paint, or that one of their typical painters that does the pinstripes on the tank will do 110 tanks a day. Absolutely incredible, all by hand. Although having said that, I noticed on my Royal Enfield, I've got the Intercept 650, the pinstriping on the tank on that is actually a sticker, or it looks like a sticker to me, whereas on my Triumph Speed Twin, that's definitely by hand, you can tell it is. So thumbs up for Triumph for doing it the old-fashioned way on the modern bike. So I wonder whether the Triumph guys do 110 a day, don't know. Be interesting to know, wouldn't it? Anyway, that was that. So next story. Get Connected is the story down here, and this is an interesting little story. I wonder what you thought about this, because this is Triumph's new cutting-edge connectivity app. It's now available for the Scrambler 1200 and the Rocket 3. Now, do you remember when the Scrambler came out? Must be over a year ago now. They made great play, didn't they, with the fact that you'd be able to control your GoPro via the bike. You could have things like turn-by-turn satellite navigation when it's linked to your phone, that sort of thing. And of course, at the time of the launch of the bikes and the first customers that bought them, that didn't exist. They said it would be coming later. Similarly, the same system is now fitted to the Rocket 3, and Triumph are now saying that you can actually get that, and if you've got the existing Scrambler or getting a Rocket 3, you can have that system retrofitted. But here's the rub, the bit that I think is outrageous. £200 plus fitting, which takes about an hour, they say it's going to cost you. Now, number one, well, how much fitting is there? I don't know if it's a Bluetooth module or what, but an hour seems like quite a lot, but maybe you have to take the instruments apart, I don't know. So we'll take that as read. But £200 as well for something that they already said was going to be on the bike, I just think that's a bit naff of Triumph. What do you think on that? It smacks to me of like what KTM used to do when they used to not enable things like the quick shifter and stuff on the bike. It was all there on the bike. It was just a software switch you had to pay extra for to get. I just think that's kind of sharp practice. I'd be interested on your view of that as well. All right, next story in this first paper. It's a while since I read these papers and marked these up, so I'm not quite sure what we've got here. How Triumph reinvented the triple. Ah yes, the Tiger 900. Of course, Triumph are well known for their triple engines. I love triple engines. To me, they give you the sort of best of both worlds. The character almost of a twin with the smoothness almost of a 4-cylinder bike. And on the new Tiger 900, which I was lucky enough to see in the flesh back at the Hinckley unveiling late last year, November I think it was, looks a great bike. Really can't wait to have a ride on it and to see how it feels, because they've done all sorts of stuff to the internal architecture of the bike, including changing the firing order. Now, it used to be that the triple engine had a 120-degree firing order, so one cylinder fires every third of a rotation of the crankshaft, if you like. Well, now on the new bike, they're using what they call a T-plane crank. So it has a firing order 132, which I think is just 1, 2, 3, but starting on a different number. But the intervals are 180 degrees, 270 and 270, giving a T-shaped crank. Following me? So in other words, two power pulses are closer together, or sorry, there are two power pulses and then a smaller one. So it's going to sound different. Triumph have made great play about the bike sounding much better than the old triples. I personally like the old triple Y myself. I didn't think it needed changing. I quite like the way that triples sound. But this one is going to sound different. It's going to be interesting to see how it sounds. But let's hope it doesn't sound different at the expense of that smoothness. I'm sure Triumph won't have done anything to spoil that. That's what they're famous for, as I say, triples. So I'm sure they haven't done anything to the Tiger 900 that's going to make it less rideable. But it's going to be really interesting to see how this T-plane crank, as they're calling it, actually rides with that different firing order. So looking forward to seeing some reviews, or hopefully riding one myself to see how that feels. All right, next story. Talking point. What have I done here? First bike, my 1000 is ideal. Ah, yes. Reason I mentioned this. This is a letter from somebody called Ross Miller, who sent in an email to Motorcycle News. This is something that comes up quite often. I wrote a little article in Motorcycle News, my blog off column, talking about when you get your first big bike, don't go mad and get too big a bike. Well, sort of predictably, Ross is a new rider that did buy a 1000cc bike, and he said he's been absolutely fine. So what was I talking about? So I often get this whenever I give my advice out. I often say, if you're buying your first bike, I have a lot of new riders watching my channel. I often get asked, what bike should I buy? I usually say, go for something with less horsepower than 100 brake horsepower. You don't need that much for your first bike. Typically, I'd say get like a 600cc bike. Learn your craft on that. Buy one second hand, then sell it for what you bought it with for 6 months later. You don't lose any money. Then buy your dream bike, because you will have learnt how to ride properly after your tests. And then whenever I say that, I get a lot of people writing in the comments. I'll probably get some more this time. People saying, oh, I bought a 1000cc bike and I'm absolutely fine. Well, that's fine. We're all grown up. Buy whatever you want. I'm just saying from my experience, that's what I would do if I was doing it again. Learn your craft on something smaller. 1000cc mega horsepower bikes, 150 horsepower bikes, 200 horsepower now is an awful lot of power if it's your first bike. I would just, in my article that I wrote, I was saying you wouldn't give a learner driver a Ferrari as their first car. So it's the same principle. Anyway, Ross Miller disagrees with me. And I'm just trying to look here what he got. He bought a Honda CB1000R for my first bike after a 6-month stint on a 125. And it's not second hand, as I'd suggested. He thinks it's a great bike. He got it over 3 years on PCP. That's another bugbear of mine. I think Ross and I would probably fall out if we went to the pub together. Anyway, he's saying, get yourself a 1000cc. His bike has got 143 brake horsepower on tap. He finds overtakes are a doddle, and he thinks it's safer than edging past on lower power. Well, he may have a point. I disagree strongly with him. I don't think a new rider should be riding a 143 brake horsepower bike, and also I don't think he should be buying on PCP, but that's another story which we'll go into another time. Anyway, thanks Ross for writing in anyway. When I got to write those articles, or when MCN asked me to take part in writing those blog off articles, which I think are now stopping, by the way, they said make them controversial if you can. So I'm absolutely thrilled when people write in response, because it means my mission was accomplished. Anyway, just thought I'd mention that in passing as we were going past the letters page. And the last story in this first paper of the review, cleaner and meaner. Here we are. This is MCN's 250 mile test that they do. I like when they pit two bikes together on exactly the same roads. Here, what they've done is the 2020 Triumph Street Triple RS against the 2019 Street Triple RS, or the one that came out in 2017. Are they really much different? Triumph have tweaked the already brilliant Street Triple RS, but can we spot the difference on the tough MCN 250, is what they've said. I love the Street Triple. Again, if you've watched my channel over any period of time, you know I own an old Street Triple. I've got the 2012 bike. I had ridden the previous 2017 version of the RS. I loved it. It's a Street Triple, but I didn't think it was that much better than my bike, unlike many journalists at the time. And therefore, I imagine the new 2020 isn't that much different again. But we'll see. Let's see what the verdict was from MCN. So according to Michael Neves, who's somebody I respect, it's a polishing of a very slightly rough diamond and not a big step forward, is his summary. Or in other words, maybe it's not such a big leap forward as you'd expect. I mean, it is only a tweak, I guess. They're saying the introduction of the new RS means you should be able to sniff out a bargain on the old one, which around the MCN 250 is every bit as capable as the new bike. So they're saying you know, if you've got the old bike, don't upgrade effectively, or if you want to save yourself some money because the new bike is out now, go and buy the old model if there's any still in the shops, and you probably won't be disappointed. And just looking at this picture of the two bikes together, they're almost indiscernible. The difference is the new bike's got the slightly slimmer lights, of course, which will give you bragging rights to the pub because it's obviously the new bike. But in terms of rideability, this article is saying that they're pretty much the same. So, and as I say, I found that even with my 2012, and I suspect if you went back to the original Street Triples, basically you've still got the same bike. Yes, there's been loads of upgrades, and people that own the new bikes I'm sure will disagree with me and say how much better the new bike is, but in essence you can't go wrong with the Street Triple. They're just brilliant bikes, full stop, whichever one you've got. All right, that was the first paper. Be interested to hear your feedback on any of the stories I talked about there. Whoops, dropping water all over me papers, that's not good. How are we doing for time? All right, 10 minutes or so in. Right, next paper. Only 3 stories here. I think this was the one that came out just after Christmas, so it's a little bit thin, I'm not sure. Okay, first story I've picked here. Ewan and Charley make it to LA. So this was this long way up challenge that Ewan and Charley have been doing over the last few months. If you remember, they're doing it on the Harley-Davidson on the live wires. So that's the electric Harley-Davidson. They're riding all the way from the south of Argentina all the way up to North America. In fact, Los Angeles, as far as they went. I thought they were going to go all the way up. Maybe they still are. Anyway, they made it to LA. A few bits I've highlighted here. So they've gone up on the live wires, as I say, but also with a pair of Rivian R1T electric pickup trucks. I guess they're their support vehicles. The whole journey took them a little over 3 months, apparently. And they did sometimes have to rely on locals with generators in wilder parts of the journey, apparently. So, you know, the range of these electric bikes still isn't quite there. Everybody raves about the Harley Livewire. I've not ridden one of those, but I have ridden other electric bikes. I love them, but range is always an issue. And if you're in the wilds of Argentina or somewhere, you would imagine that getting charged up could be an issue. So I guess that's why they took the trucks. For much of the journey, they were followed by petrol and diesel-powered vehicles, which ferried battery packs around to keep the bikes topped up. There's that answer. So not only did they have the Rivian R1T electric pickup trucks, a trio of those. I know the trio were followed by a pair of Rivian pickup trucks. I'm not entirely sure what those were for, because they also had, as I say, these petrol and diesel powered vehicles that ferried battery packs for them. So it's a bit, I mean, it's going to make an interesting program. We're all going to watch it and it's going to be great. And I don't, you know, bear these guys any malice whatsoever, but it's not a realistic trip, is it? If you've got all these support vehicles. Norley, itchy boots, that's the way to do that trip. Not that she's doing it on an electric bike, but back on a trusty Royal Enfield, of course. Anyway, I digressed. MCN expects the show to air sometime in the spring. So there's no official word about the program yet, but we're expecting it to come out in the next few months. So we'll keep our eyes peeled for that. See how they got on and see what they say about the electric bikes and see if they, you know, kind of come clean about how they've kept them running. I suspect they're going to have to, because no one's going to believe that, you know, they've done this without some major support. Be interesting to see what Harley thinks about all that. I'm not sure. Harley have remained quiet about the whole enterprise. It'll be interesting to see what happens when the program airs and how successful that is. Okay. Just a quick one here. There's a big advert centre spread here for the London MCN Motorcycle Show. It's on at the London Excel Centre from the 14th to the 16th of Feb. I've mentioned this before. It's a show I really like. It has all the same new bikes, pretty much all the same new bikes. All the main manufacturers go there that were at the NEC in November, but it's in a slightly smaller format. It's easier to get around. And getting to the Excel Centre is actually very easy if you go on your bike. I went last year on my bike. You can park undercover, you can hand your kit in for a small donation to a charity. It just works really well, and it's a great show. I'm going to go there myself on the Sunday, so that's the 16th of Feb. I'll be there on the custom fit guards stand from, I think, 1 PM onwards. Do come and say hello if you're going to the show. It'd be fabulous to see you. Yeah, so that was it. I just wanted to mention that I'm there at the show on the 16th. So if you haven't worked out what day you're going to go on the Sunday, come and say hello to me at the custom fit guards stand. Get yourself a discount on the custom fit guards way there for mentioning the Missenden Flyer as well. And actually, they say sometimes and usually do show discounts. So if you do want to get some earplugs made, it's a good chance to get it done there. As well as having a chat to yours truly. Right, last one here. High hopes for Low Rider. This is again is the MCN 250, my favourite little test that MCN do. They've pitted this time the Harley-Davidson Low Rider S against the Ducati Diavel 1260S. The Ducati is 20 grand just over. The Harley is almost 16 grand. So the Ducati 4 grand more, quite a lot more. And one of the reasons why this is of interest to me is, again, if you've been watching my channel recently, you'll know that I've borrowed a Ducati Diavel. I had the X Diavel over the Christmas period. It's just gone back to to Ducati. I've got another one, possibly two videos to go on it. I think I've got two videos to go on it. And my kind of view of the Diavel changed over the period that I had it. Once I put some miles on it, I started to see the shortcomings of the bike. Lovely looking beast, but well, I won't do a spoiler on my final summing up and what I thought of the ex-Diavel. But anyway, they pitted the Diavel, the 1260S, against the Harley. Let's see what they thought of these two, which one wins. So, if you're after a sporty cruiser, the new Low Rider S is a significant step up over the old. But, there's a big but here, it says here, for Harley fans that might be enough, but for the rest of us it probably isn't, as it's crude, uncomfortable and frustrating. Well, that's quite a damning indictment, isn't it? Crude, uncomfortable and frustrating, that's not the sort of bike you want really, is it? While the latest Diavel, even though imperfect, is simply light years better. If you want a slick, modern, fast V-twin cruiser, though how much of a cruiser Ducati is remains debatable, go for the Diavel. But I'd say 3K it and go for the base version, is what Phil West from MCN is saying. That's incredible. So they're saying that the Diavel is definitely by far and away the better bike. I still haven't ridden Harley yet. I've got to do that. I've got to put that right. I'd love to go on a Harley. Spring's around the corner. Got to do that this year. I keep promising that. All right, so that was it. Those are the stories for the second paper of the review. Right, next paper. I'm going from that paper that only had 3 stories that I picked out. This one, I've got about 7.5 stories by the looks of it. So this was one that really piqued my interest. It's interesting how sometimes papers are full of stuff that's relevant, sometimes they're not. Anyway, one more crack. John McGuinness gets new TT chance with Bournemouth Kawasaki. Yeah, this is great news. This who doesn't like John McGuinness? What a chirpy chappy he is. He's got himself a ride on a Dunlop shod ZX10RR sponsored by Bournemouth Kawasaki. If you remember right, last TT he was riding the Norton, of course. Maybe more about Norton shortly. There's been some interesting stories circulating about Norton in the press in the last month. But anyway, just wanted to mention in passing how pleased I am that John McGuinness has got himself another ride. The ZX10RR is a competitive bike. We'll see how he does. He's got plans to start testing in Spain next month, that being February. And he said, it's just nice to be in the position where I can get a competitive ride, and that means I can have another crack of the whip. I don't know if he's, if he's going to win this year. There's lots of talent now in the TT, isn't there? But it's always good when John McGuinness is in the TT. Can't wait to see him do that. And that's like riding a Harley. I've got to get to the TT someday. Never been. Got to go. You're not a proper biker, are you, unless you've been to the TT? So I've got to put that right at some point. Okay, next story here. 2019, a good year for bikes. Just a little sum up here of bikes that have sold well over 2019. Of the large capacity machines, the big winner of the year are BMW again. They always seem to be, with the R1250GS and R1250GS Adventure taking the 2 hot spots, and the Royal Enfield Interceptor a very close third, as I mentioned earlier. So the GSs and the Interceptor wiping the floor in terms of big bike sales here in the UK, and I suspect that's repeated elsewhere in Europe. Of course, not in other markets necessarily. In the US, of course, Harleys, I expect, will be outselling stuff, and in Middle East Asia, perhaps the Japanese bikes. I don't know. I haven't looked at those statistics, but that's what's selling in Europe at the moment, which I guess is no surprise, but because it's been the same, well, certainly on from the BMW front for the last few years. Nice to see Royal Enfield up there, though. Another one I've picked out here. Word on the street: new Street Triple S gets big bike looks to give an A2 delight. So this is the base Street Triple, which you can ride on a A2 license. Now this is a bit complicated if you're not in the UK, but basically an A2 license is for somebody that's not old enough to ride a full power bike, but they can ride more than a 125 after they've taken a test. I think it's like that anyway. So this bike is a 660cc version of the Street Triple. Looks exactly the same as a normal Street Triple, and what they've done now is given it a bit of a an update. So it's got the lights from the new RS that we talked about earlier, so it looks just like the RS actually. And if you're on an A2 license, then this is a fantastic bike to have. This does work as a first bike. I think this absolutely hits that sweet spot for your first bike. It looks good, it goes well. 168 kilograms dry, so it's nice and light. 93.8 brake horsepower, so ample power to get yourself past other bikes. Low seat height, £7,900, good price too, love it. I've highlighted a few bits here from the article. So it's got some tweaks to match the recently released RS, mentioned that. Some new internal positioning lights as well. Bodywork itself is a bit more angular, and it's got a new short fly screen and air intake as well, so some cosmetic changes basically. Also the Street Triple S gets 2 riding modes, road and rain, plus some basic rider assist, including ABS and traction control. Great stuff, you know, even for a new rider. No word from Triumph yet on availability, but £7,900 is the price, as I say. So if you're a new rider looking for your first bike, I wholeheartedly recommend the Street Triple S, especially now it looks new. Fantastic, fantastic bike if you want to buy new. But again, I stand by my previous comment about buying second-hand for your first bike. Okay, now I mentioned Norton earlier. There's an interesting story here. Norton in court over unpaid tax. Now this is a bit of a shocker because I'm a massive Norton fan. Again, I love all British bikes and I wish all British manufacturers the best, including Norton, who have announced some incredible bikes, and including those 600cc bikes that they launched a couple of years ago, or a year and a half ago now, and people paid money, put deposits down at the NEC show, not the last show, but the one before, for those bikes, and they still haven't seen the bikes. And as far as I know, they haven't even built the factory yet that those bikes are going to be made in. So it's a real shame for the people that have put down those deposits. If you're one of them, my heart goes out to you, because it's only getting worse by the sounds of it. There's been some interesting stuff in other press that I've read about maybe some weirdness going on around the pension fund, where Norton have dipped into that to do other things that they shouldn't be done. That's you know, according to Stuart Gardner, the owner of Norton, that's sort of a administrative oversight, and that should all go away. But now more stuff is happening. So representatives from Norton Motorcycles appeared in the insolvency and companies court in London last week to contest a winding up petition regarding £300,000 of unpaid taxes. So they're now being accused of not paying their taxes. Because the company, so HMRC's barrister told Judge Sebastian Prentice that because the company is making payments and the debt figure is being reduced, they were seeking an adjournment requesting 63 days for the outstanding amount to be settled. So in other words, they've adjourned that hearing now until February the 12th. So what's that, couple of weeks, and then presumably Norton are going to be back in court again to see whether this insolvency thing goes ahead. Real bad news. I mean, is this the end of Norton? I don't know, maybe I'm overblowing it, but all these little things you hear, you know, no smoke without fire and all that, it just doesn't feel right, does it, with Norton at the moment? I think they maybe came out with too many models, the big sports bike, both the 600s, didn't quite have the money to make them, weren't getting bikes out on time. It's just horrible, and I feel for the people that work at Norton, I feel for Stuart Gardner, and I feel for the people that have put money down on these bikes. If they don't emerge and end up losing that money, it'll be terrible. But anyway, I watch with interest what's going to happen in a couple of weeks when that hearing comes along again. Interested to hear if you've got any thoughts on that. Okay, next up, it's the London Motorcycle Show. I've already mentioned that, we won't go over that again. Right, Bimota, go back to the future. Firm heart back to 1970s KB1 with a new Ninja-powered KB4. Check out this little bike. It looks amazing. So it's a KB4 retro-inspired sports bike, as seen in these official renders, not made yet. It's the second new model to arrive since Kawasaki bought Bimota a while back. They've got a 49.9% stake in the company, and it features the 2020 Kawasaki Ninja 1000 SX. Engine and a new Bmotor chassis. Looks lovely, doesn't it? Looks absolutely great. So the idea shared by Bmotor technicians is to have a 600cc size motorcycle with the power of a torquey 1000cc. Looks great. Some of the things it says here is, well, first of all, the price, 16 grand. Is what they're asking for this bike, or they think it's going to be, which strikes me as pretty expensive. Nothing exotic comes cheap, does it? But for 16 grand, you could buy, for example, the new Ducati V2 Panigale. Would you rather have the Bimota or the Panigale? Not sure. I think I'd probably have the Panigale. Anyway, it's nice that they're doing this thing, and it looks a nice bike. Be interested to hear your thoughts on that one too. Okay. Another of the MCN 250s. Now, a bit like when they did that test of the old Street Triple versus the new one, they've done a similar thing here, comparing the new CRF1100L against the new updated bike. Sorry, the old CRF1000L Africa Twin with DCT against the new 2020 1100L with DCT. I haven't ridden the new bike yet. I rode the old bike. So let me just get rid of this. And I very much am a fan of the Africa Twin, as it seems most people are who ride them. Really nice bike. When I rode the Adventure Sport version last year, I thought it was a great bike, but it was just a little bit too tall for me, so I'm thrilled that on the new version they actually lowered the seat height. So I am going to borrow one of these from Honda, actually. I've got in the diary for, I think it's March time. I'm going to have one of these long term, and it'll be really good to see how much better this new bike is. I'm hoping I'm going to get the DCT version, because that is just such a great system. With a lowered seat and DCT, I think it's going to be an excellent bike. Anyway, nearly half the Africa Twins sold in the UK apparently feature dual clutch transmission so far. So it's not just me that thinks it's a good thing by the sounds of it. Okay, the verdict that MCN have given this one. Whether the DCT on the 2020 Africa Twin is better than on the 2019 version is open for debate. We prefer the response of the older bike. That's very interesting, isn't it? It's enough that I'd sacrifice the extra pep of the 1100 and go for the 1000. Handling, comfort and ride quality just as good, and the switch gear won't send you crazy. The 2019 bike's list price is also nearly £2 cheaper. However, you can find a brand spanker for £12,499. So it's enough to steal the older bike. So here, Mike Armitage is the reporter that's come up with this. They're basically saying the older bike is the one to go for, if you can find one. Doesn't seem like they're saying there's a huge difference between the two. Interesting. Certainly when you just look at them, they don't look much different. Again, bike manufacturers are allowed, aren't they, just to have little updates, little tweaks, so that if you happen to be in the market this year, you buy the latest one, that's fine, and it's not hugely different to the last one. I don't see a problem with that. But anyway, having said that, the new Africa Twin, looking down here, has got the new TFT screen that looks absolutely amazing. But one of the things that I remember when I read the article is MCN criticised the switch gear because it's really complicated now. It's got buttons all over the place, whereas the old switch gear was a bit more simple. But anyway, there we go. So that's the Africa Twin. I'll be interested to see how that does sales-wise. Because all the reviews are always good. People I've seen that have ridden them, people like my pal Richie Vida's recently ridden one of these up to Scotland. What a nutter. He loves the bike. I'm really interested to have another go on these and just sort of compare it against the GS again, see how I think it fares. Okay, last store in here, show with added go. This is the new Triumph Thruxton RS. Raises the retro bar again, so a few things I've highlighted here. The new bike, the new range topping Thruxton, 13 grand is how much this is going to cost you. A little bit, what gets me with this, if you bought the Thruxton R, say last year or the year before, it annoys me that they come out with an RS version that trumps you again, because now you're going to feel in the pub you've lost your bragging rights. Even worse is if you bought the Thruxton before the R came out. So I'm in this position a bit with my Speed Twin. When the Speed Twin came out, you just bought a Speed Twin. What's the betting they bring out a Speed Twin R this year and maybe next year an RS with extra bits of bling? It will annoy me slightly. I'm not going to rush out to go and buy one, but it's just what these people do. All manufacturers, or lots of manufacturers do this. I'm not having a go at Triumph. Sorry about that, folks. Camera cut out. Believe it or not, I'm using my GoPro Hero 8 for the first time to record bike news, and it came up with an overheating warning and then shut down. So I just had to stick the camera in the fridge for a bit. So got another paper to get through. I hope it doesn't overheat before we finish, so I better get even faster as I go here. So sorry about that. Anyway, where were we? We're talking about the Triumph Thruxton RS. So yeah, what's the difference then between this and the R, the standard R? First off, high spec Brembo M50 monoblock brakes. Very nice indeed, latest brakes. Not sure whether you really need them on this sort of bike, but nice to have. Sticker Metzler Racetech RR K3 tyres, a lighter battery. It's got blacked out Olin springs on the rear shock. Not sure whether that's a great thing or not. And it's almost 6 kilograms, almost a stone lighter than the R, which is quite a weight saving. That's amazing. What else have we got? Racy pistons, cams, and a gas flow as well to boost the BHP. So yeah, very, very nice. What's the verdict here that Michael Neves has said? 13 grand is a lot of money. For the last word in Off the Peg, Cafe Racer styling, sounds and performance, the new Thruxton RS is it. They love it. He loves it. He's always loved the Thruxton RS. I love it too, particularly when you go for the fairing kit. I think it looks nice then. Without the fairing kit, I'm not sure it looks that great, but sure does look good there. So another bit I've highlighted here, the new Thruxton RS is pricey, and you can have just as big a giggle on something with half the power and price. But when you look at the kit and performance you get for the money, the latest Triumph is worth every penny. That's what MCN are saying. It's Triumphs are beautifully finished these days. You know I'm a Triumph fanboy. But yeah, the new RS looks nice, yeah, particularly with the fairing. Maybe I should have another go on one of those. Right, so that's it for that paper. Let's hastily do the last one before my camera switches itself off again. Overheating, outrageous. I guess it's just because I've been recording for so long. Right. So this is last week's paper then. First thing, exposed fake back protectors lurking in cheap kit. Now this is a story where MCN have found some kit for sale. I think it was on eBay, where it looks like it's got proper CE rating back protectors, but in fact they aren't. MCN spoke to motorcycle clothing expert Paul Varnsbury for his opinion. Now Paul is kind of Mr. CE clothing, and I know he watches the channel occasionally as well, so hello Paul if you're watching. One of these days, if you're interested, let me know if you are. I could probably arrange an interview with Paul to talk about the CE standards. It's a bit of a dry subject, I guess, but they have been changed in the last few years. It's quite important to understand what these standards actually all about. But anyway, MCN bought for £54 a textile jacket online, which claimed to have CE armour. And turned out, of course, it wasn't for that price. I mean, you kind of get what you pay for, don't you? The vendor was called Extron Bikewear, and they claimed the jacket that MCN purchased was an isolated rogue garment. Yeah, right. Which was mistakenly being fitted with the wrong component. That sounds a load of old baloney, doesn't it? Anyway, just beware if you're going to buy stuff online. Make sure that you have got what you think you're buying, and if it's, you know, if something seems too good to be true, if you're buying something for 54 quid and it claims to be CE protected, if it's too good to be true, it probably is. Anyway, the point is that garments have to be tested as a whole garment now, and it's quite a complicated area, so maybe it's one for a video in itself. Let me know if you think that would be a good video or not, and I could probably arrange that with TMF viewer Paul Varnessy. All right, I hope that's right, Paul, if you're watching. We've never spoken directly about it, but we have a mutual contact. You know who that is, and it might be that we can do that. All right, next story here. Panigale on top. Interesting. This is another sales story about what's been selling. Now, it turns out that 1 in every 4 superbikes sold last year was a Panigale. I've often said that I think the Ducati Panigale is the most beautiful bike ever made. Many disagree with me, and I understand that. It's just a personal thing. I love the Panigale. They sold, they topped the sales charts last year as the world's best-selling superbike with 8,300 sold. That's amazing. And also that helped Ducati to their second biggest ever sales year with 53,000 bikes sold. Again, when you compare those numbers to those, you know, 1.2 million of Royal Enfield, can't remember how many million it was for Honda, puts it, you know, into perspective, doesn't it, how much smaller these European manufacturers are. But nonetheless, great stat that 1 in 4 superbikes sold was a Panigale. I wonder what the others were. I'm suspecting BMW S1000RR perhaps, Yamaha R1, bet that was there. Anyway, just thought I'd point that one out. Next up, rattling through so the camera doesn't overheat again. Ducati's V4 goes on high fibre diet. Now this again, manufacturers, Ducati always do this. They bring out a new bike. They brought out the V4 a couple of years ago, then the V4 Superleggera, the light version, and various iterations of. They've now come out, sorry, this is the Superleggera that we're talking about. This is the Super Light. Again, they used to have a Super Light of the old 1199 Panigale. 75 grand this bike would cost you. Looks like a Panigale, lots of carbon on it. These are spy shots. It's got the best power to weight ratio of any Ducati ever made ever. 1,277 brake horsepower per tonne, apparently. Just a nuts amount of power. Total dry weight is 152 kilograms. That's a 20 kilogram saving on the standard bike, which is incredible, isn't it? I guess a lot of that is by putting the carbon on the thing. 221 brake horsepower at 15,250 RPM. Makes it the most powerful version of the bike yet. Just a nuts amount of power. It's got a new set of wings on the front. Wings are all the thing these days, aren't they? 67% more downforce than the V4R. And it's even got more downforce than Ducati's latest Moto GP machine. So an absolute beast. Amazing looking bike again, but to the untrained eye, it's, in quotes, just a Panigale. But, well, that's the one to have if you've got 75 grand to burn. Don't know how many they're making. Production begins in April. 5 bikes will be built a day, but there's no word about the total production run. So there's obviously some rich people out there that think you're going to buy those. But, yeah, what a bike. Incredible. Bit expensive for most of us, of course. Not a bit expensive, way too expensive. Oh, there's the London Bike Show again. I was obviously very keen to mention that, so don't forget, I'll be there on the Sunday. Right, last story then of this bike review. Hope you're still with me. Who are you calling retro? This is pitting the Triumph Scrambler 1200 against the Moto Guzzi V85TT. Very lucky that I rode both these bikes last year in the summer. I feel I know them both quite well because I didn't just ride them, but I had each bike for a month and really got to know them. If you haven't seen my videos on those, do go and check those out. I'll put links in the corners somewhere to each bike. What was interesting to me about this is they've come up with their verdict on the two bikes. And both bikes are similar prices. The Triumph Scrambler 11.5, Moto Guzzi 11,099. It's only 400 quid between them. They've given both bikes 4 stars out of 5, so that doesn't really help us. But what they've said here is the Triumph's got the grunt and the noise, but an all-round motorcycle, the Guzzi is the Guzzi, I should say, is the hands-down winner, is what MCN say. Oh, I could not disagree more. And this isn't because I'm a Triumph fanboy, although I am, I admit that. The Triumph, although ultimately, I found the bike too top heavy and too physically large for me. I'm just a small fella. Moving it around on the driveway, difficult on the Scrambler for me. But wow, when you're riding it, it was such a beautiful bike to ride. It was comfortable, it was powerful, it was smooth, beautiful quality build. The Moto Guzzi, as far as I was concerned, interesting looks. You either like them or you don't. I thought it looked like Orville the Duck. Bags of character. That just means it was kind of lumpy to me. Didn't have much go either, and also I didn't find it that comfortable. So for me, the Triumph Scrambler is the hands down winner in that too. For MCN to say that the Moto Guzzi was hands down winner, I think is frankly amazing. Just as Mike Armitage. Now everybody's got their own view, of course. It's his opinion versus mine. I'm guessing Mike is a seasoned journalist and, you know, is trained and ridden motorcycles far longer than me. Maybe you should listen to his opinion rather than mine, because this guy knows what he's talking about. I'm just some fella on YouTube who makes videos in his garage. But I really preferred the Triumph Scrambler to the Moto Guzzi. I'm not saying the Guzzi was a bad bike by any means, and I'm sure many people prefer that, but I'm stunned that they've come up with this verdict. A couple more things here. Triumph Scrambler is more capable than its looks suggest. Muscular, flexible motor, works at all speeds. Handling swells confidence, and it's loaded with extras. But on a 250-mile day, the bolt upright stance, wind blast and seat are limited. Blast to the pub, yes. Cross the country on one, no. I completely disagree. This is where the Moto Guzzi scores. You still get the blend of modernity and retro cool, and perhaps even more authenticity, but with day-long comfort and a sense of rugged quality that makes up for slightly less oomph. Well, the quality on the Triumph certainly is as good as the Moto Guzzi, and it's not slightly less oomph. There's a lot less oomph if you ask me. And what talking about with comfort? I don't know. There you go. Just shows how two different people can have completely different opinions. All right, there we go. That's it. I better shut up quick because I've been going on for a bit, as I suspected I would, and the old camera's going to overheat again. So that's it for this time. Thanks very much for watching. If you've stuck around for this long, thank you very much indeed. Look forward to speaking to you again soon with another bike news. Before then, lots more coming on the channel. Oh, let's see if I can quickly drag up what's coming. I've got 2 videos a week, of course, is what I'm doing, with the occasional bonus Saturday video. Now, I did actually, last week I put up a bonus video about me installing the fuel booster on my Royal Enfield. Now, that video only lasted for 2 days, but it turned out I'd actually installed it incorrectly, so I took the video down because I didn't want to make anybody else follow my lead and install it the way I did. You have to actually connect the booster, if you're interested in this, into a white connector, which was hiding in my bike. I didn't see it at the time. I connected it to the wrong connectors, so I've taken that down. I may remake the video, I don't know, but that's why that suddenly disappeared, if you wondered. It was nothing to do with me not liking the booster. It's just that I'd put up a video that was incorrect. So thank you to those of you that pointed it out to me. There are at least 2 of you. I went and checked the bike. You were right, I was wrong, so I took the video down. Anyway, that was, the reason why I mentioned that is because that was a Saturday video. There may be the odd Saturday bonus video, but on the main, I'm putting videos up on Mondays and Thursdays. Mondays will be my tour videos, so at the moment that's Slovenia. If you haven't seen that series, do check that out. And then after Slovenia's finished, we'll be into my Thailand tour, and then every other video is something else. Coming up in the next month, I've got more on the Ducati X Diavel. I've got the BMW F900XR first ride. I haven't ridden it yet, but I'm promised that I'm going to be riding it in the next few weeks, so really looking forward to that. Got another biker scrounge with Jeff and Dan coming soon as well. That's a cracker, worth watching. And then, of course, the next Bike News Monthly will be coming around about February the 27th, so stick around, stay tuned for that. All right, I hope that's been of some interest to you. Look forward to speaking to you again soon. Until then, this has been the Missenden Flyer. Cheerio.